My sharing today is actually sponsored by a seed that was planted in my mind when I was watching the this year's NAACP Awards ceremony. And one of the recipients of one of the major NAACP awards was Viola Davis. And I have heard Viola interviewed a number of times. I know parts of her story, and it is a story of resurrection, a story, a living story that the resurrection was a success. She, along with people like Oprah Winfrey and several others, were born into abject poverty. Not only financial poverty, but having very little dirt floor kind of poverty, no indoor plumbing kind of poverty, times of not knowing if you're going to be able to eat, whether you'll have shelter over your head, kind of poverty. And she's standing up on the platform receiving this award. And she shared so many profound things that triggered other memories in my mind. But none of her testimony was about how awesome it is that I, through the power of God in me and through my own cooperation and walk with me, Lord, talk with me, Lord, take my hand, guide my feet, Lord. She wasn't bragging at all about any of that, having allowed her to arrive at a place of fame or fortune. She was born in abject poverty, but none of her joy was about now I can eat in any restaurant in the world. We didn't have transportation and we walked, but now I can fly. None of it was a testimony about things, the things of the world. All of it was a testimony about discovering the power that is within you and using every ounce of your heart, soul, mind, and strength to bring that possibility into a reality. One of the things that she shared was a quote that she said she had heard early on in her life. And it was a quote, and how she put it was that she talked about a hell encounter after you finish your dash. Now, of course, in Unity, we do not believe in hell or the devil, but we know that they represent something. The word hell represents us being lost and consciously separate from God, separate from one another, separate from all that is, having no joy in your heart, having no hope that that can be a living hell. But she associated with the traditional teaching on hell that when you take your last breath, when your dash is over, will you have an encounter with heaven or hell? As she put it, and what I got was, it doesn't matter whether she's talking about the old time religion, hell or not. I know what she's talking about. I know she's talking about having an encounter that makes me feel like, oh my God, what have I done? She referred to it as a moment after your incarnation ends, your dash is over. She said, for many people, they will experience a moment that feels like hell when who I have settled on being gets to meet who I could have become. I paused that TV right there. I grabbed my ink pen, I grabbed an index card, and I wrote that down. An encounter, Carlos Wayne, where the me I have settled for being comes face to face with the me I could have become. What this inspired in me was a remembrance of a knowing. And that knowing is it ain't over. I'm not finished. I went back to having encountered a series of tapes that someone sent me back in the late 60s or early 70s. And this series of tapes were entitled Refuse to Be a Human Being. When I first saw it, somebody sent me this box, and I look, and the title is Refuse to Be a Human Being. I actually started not to even listen to the first tape because I didn't get it. Why would I want a 3-tape box telling me to refuse to be a human being? And then I did listen, and I began to understand what the spokesperson was putting forth. The information on the tape was the idea of a human being is a fixed state, and that many of us live in a fixed state. I'm a human being. And so, why am I reactive? It's only human. I'm only human. Why do I get afraid at so many news reports? I'm only human. Why do I get upset with people who bug me? Because I'm only human. Why do I live an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Somebody hurts me and I start thinking of how I can hurt them back because I'm only human. Why can somebody say something and have me suddenly feel diminished, feel attacked because I'm only human? And so this person channeling was saying, refuse to be a human being, because the word being has us locked in a static position. I am being who I am being. The invitation was for us to consider ourselves not as human beings, but as human becomings. Always know that you are not stuck being. You can always be involved in becoming. It's an opening. It reminded me of Neil Donald Walsch and his material, who spoke to me and said, every moment offers an opportunity for me to recreate myself anew as the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever I have held of who I am. That somewhere in me, I have an idea about me. And that idea that I have about me is that I can be anybody I choose to be. I can be free of all my littleness. I can be done with all my attack. I can be whoever I vision myself to be. A lot of this refuse to be a human being and to get involved consciously in becoming, just ever expanding. I had read that today was devoted to women and to the feminine principle. And I began to realize that the whole idea is to constantly be involved in rebirthing oneself, to rebirth yourself into higher and higher, purer and purer, more manifestations of who you are. It's a never ending process. And so if I find myself thinking about myself as being stuck, I want to stop and go, I'm not being, I'm becoming. Now, I have overheard a number of people, particularly in the last couple of years of life in the United States of America, who have been making a lot of affirmation statements that do not serve their power. And they are telling me and others what they are becoming. And so I don't have to get them to go, oh, you're stuck in being. No, they're telling me I'm becoming. And what they're sharing with themselves and anyone who will listen is that I am becoming ever more concerned. I am becoming ever more frightened. I am becoming ever more freaked out about what's going on in the country, about what's going on in the world. So that led me to go, it's not just to be open to becoming, but I must be open to becoming on purpose. On purpose. If I am not on purpose with becoming more secure, becoming more safe, becoming more God connection, I could easily have as my testimony the ones that I just spoke. I could have a testimony. I am becoming more and more and more and more freaked out, more and more and more and more shaken by the events. So that reminded me of a book. I think I must have been in my teens or in my early 20s when I encountered a book title. Can't tell you anything about what was in it. The title was enough. And the title of the book was, If You Do Not Know Where You're Going, you will probably end up somewhere else. If you do not know where you're going, you will probably end up somewhere else. In other words, that's a call to become on purpose and to have a vision of who you're becoming. Have a vision of you insist on becoming. Viola Davis, and I've heard the same testimony from Oprah Winfrey and several other major celebrated people, talked about being a chocolate skinned Black girl in the United States and how many strikes that automatically put against you. She said that the entire world around her was basically giving her this identity to take on, which was, you're a nobody. You're dirt poor, you have nothing. You're not even one of the pretty girls. You're not feminine enough. Your skin's not light enough. Your features are too African. You know, there's the whole white and black thing and the problems that exist with that. But what some white people don't know, within the Black community, in the Latino community, even in the Italian community, colorism is alive and well. Colorism, when I was a child, was outstanding. A dark-skinned person was automatically considered somehow on a lower scale than even his or her brother or sister who has skin the color of caramel. And if a skin color in the Black community was referred to as, we would call it, high yellow, meaning you're lighter than caramel. You're not dark chocolate. You're not milk chocolate. You're not caramel. You're somewhere in another level. It was an interesting thing to witness and to be a part of. It did not matter what your features were. If you were high yellow, people were going, isn't she beautiful? Mm-hmm. If your hair was straighter than my kinky hair, isn't he handsome? So people like Viola and Oprah, they not only had to crawl through the oppression and the negation that came from the white predominant society. But they had to overcome the oppression and suppression within their own community and among their own people. So here's Viola saying, everybody's telling me, you're at the bottom of the pit, girl. Ain't no way you're ever going to amount to anything or be anybody. Connection. She had heard what once I heard. As I saw a handsome man take a platform and introduce himself as Reverend Jesse Jackson. Mm-hmm. And in his audience were the downtrodden, the poor, the disserviced. And at that time, in my witness point, there were so many of his people who appeared to be lifeless. They were in abject poverty. Doors were closed to them. The whole world was telling them, you're a nobody. But Jesse said, I'm going to give you a new identity, a new affirmation, a new I am statement. It was very simple. It wasn't long or eloquent. You could learn it just like that. Mm-hmm. School kids, kindergartners, preschoolers, they picked it up at the drop of a hat. 3 words. I am somebody. Oh my God. Viola heard that. Oprah heard that. All of the downtrodden heard that. He said, if you don't have shoes for your feet, know this, I am somebody. If you don't know where your food is coming from for your dinner meal, don't let that change your identity. Sit at an empty table, eating a half of an apple, reminding yourself, I am somebody. The 2 Black magazines at the time, the 2 predominant Black magazines were Jet Magazine and Ebony Magazine. And Jet and Ebony had taken photographs of masses of people who were put down and who had nothing. And you could see the hollow look in their eyes. They were almost ashen. You could see that they thought of themselves as nobody because they had succumbed to agreeing with what society said about them. Within a matter of months, some of the same photographers went around photographing some of the same people living in the same conditions. I still ain't got no shoes. We still ain't got no food. We still don't have transportation. The doors are still shut in our face. Nothing out there has changed. But the photographs, the light shining out of their eyes, the glow of their skin, what has changed? Their identity. I am somebody. So as I am on purpose in my quest to continue to become, to give birth to greater and greater and more beautiful and wonderful manifestations of who it is possible for me to be. As one of our poets said, my reason for being is to release the hidden splendor that is within me. Mm-hmm. As the Unity Minister Eric Butterworth said, your mission should you choose to accept it, is to quit searching out there. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to discover the power that is within you. So Viola, Oprah, and others had a smile in their heart in the presence of anybody, anywhere, saying, "You ain't nobody." The smile was this knowing that I have. They didn't give it to me. I am somebody. And no matter what they say, they can't take away my new identity. I am somebody. And then you have a vision. Since you are becoming, who are you becoming? And you take charge of that. And you be in the power of deciding and sticking to your decision of who it is you choose to be becoming. The Bible, there's a scripture that says, without a vision, the people perish. If you don't have a vision, how are you ever going to arrive at the manifestation of one? Get a clear vision of who you want to continue to become: more loving, more caring, more peaceful, more joyful, more giving, more supporting. Have a vision. Because without a vision, there's nothing that can manifest. If you don't have a dream, how can your dream come true? Once again, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up somewhere else. And so at the end of the NAACP Awards, I was thanking Viola not only for what she shared, but for the other memories and thoughts that are triggered in my mind. I brought in Oprah Winfrey's testimony. I brought in my own witness and from my own history. I went back to Reverend Jackson. I remembered I went back to the age I was when that statement, that affirmation shared and multiplied, changed the world I was looking at and changed the lives of so many. Here we are at Unity. Unity is what Charles Fillmore referred to as practical Christianity, which he referred to as practicable Christianity. That you have to keep practicing and then practice some more. And that the sky's the limit. I like how far I have arrived thus far in my becoming, but I ain't tired yet. I'm not done. I have some visions for Carlos Wayne Anderson that are going to require him to do everything he can to devote all of his heart, soul, mind, and strength into staying on point. Who are you becoming? That would be your food for thought for today. Who am I becoming? What is my vision of who it is possible for me to be? Who am I giving birth? What will it take for me to not get lost and off track? One of my favorite things about Unity is the fifth principle reminder that knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called true, are just the beginning. I must also live the truth I know. And one of my favorite affirmations that comes from unity. It's the light of God surrounds me. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds me. I am the love of God. Power of God protects me. I am power of God. Wherever God is, and all is well. Knowing and understanding these words are just the beginning. I must come to believe that with all of my heart, soul, mind, and strength. And I must notice when I am reacting to anything out there, like a scared little mouse, that it's because in that moment I have forgotten that I am what those principles say I am. And if you ever have a trial, tribulation, or struggle that makes you feel helpless and hopeless, if anybody, anywhere, at any time seeks to convince you that you're not enough, I'm hoping you have a smile inside of you. And that regardless of what's going on out there, that you are sure of one thing. I am somebody. If you know it, you can show it. My daddy used to say, if you don't know it, you can't show it. You are the power of God, but if you don't know it, you can't show it. You are the light of the world, but if you don't know it, you can't show it. So let's know it and let's show it.
Yes, amen.